are so thrilled that you are listening in today. This series is called Coffee with Creatives, and it's intended to inspire creativity, celebrate real life creatives like Marlene here today, doing great things in the world of contemporary music and composition. And hopefully, it will bring you listeners this music, it'll bring it to life for you at home as well as you explore music for yourself or alongside students. So today's guest is Marlene Moore, a concert pianist, a music educator, composer, and creator of the Back to Basics piano method. So meeting Marlene has been a total gift for me. Thank you for being here today, Marlene.
And my pleasure.
Yes, and you're a passionate creator. You compose music for beginners all the way up to very advanced concert level repertoire. And today we may also get to take a sneak peek at a symphony that's a work in progress for you. When we met online through Facebook groups, I had no idea that we also both hail from Vancouver Island, Canada. And now you've been transplanted into California alongside your husband, Michael, which is wonderful. So thank you for being here, Marlene, and I'm excited to get to know you better today.
I'm excited today too. It's really fun.
Yeah. Oh, well, you're so brave and wonderful. So to get us started with the questions today, we're all excited to hear more from you. Let's think way back to Marlene as a music student. And I know that your start was much younger than some of us and that you had some early musical inclination. How would you describe yourself as a youthful Marlene learning and practicing the piano?
How would I describe myself? I guess what pops into my mind first is age 3.
Yes.
Would you believe? My parents took me to see a movie, a Walt Disney movie called Johnny Fedora Loves Alice Bluebonnet.
Wow.
And this is way back when. And the entire theme was going through my little head, and apparently, I sat with my chin on the next seat, and I was very interested in what it was. And all the way through, I was singing this little tune, and I guess I sang it all the way home. And when I got home, I put my fat little leg over the concert stool of the piano, which my parents had in the dining room, and I played it. It was this and so on, and then I figured out what sounded nice with each one. And it went on for hours, apparently, until my parents made me go to bed, and the piano lesson started the next week.
Wow.
Yeah, and I was young, really, age 3, so I guess I had been born with this sense of pitch and this ability to hear really well, hear music. So when the piano started, that's the most I remember, was those early teachers, and I don't remember the practicing. For me, it was just fun.
Yeah, beautiful.
I played.
Yeah.
It was fun. That's
Oh,
all I remember.
I love that so much. And wasn't that so special that not only did you have this like keen ear for music and you got to play it right away when you got home from that feature, but it's also really special that your family noted that and was able to take action and get you studying music, which is really unique and special. That's neat.
Yes.
I remember hearing that as part of your time in lessons, you would go early to lessons and listen in to some of the older students playing things like sonatinas, and you were still playing some very basics and felt held back, I think, as a student. I seem to remember you had this surprise performance for the audience and your teacher. Could you tell us a little bit about that today?
That's way back. I won't mention her name. She's probably long gone, but anyway, she wasn't the right teacher for me, shall we say. She put me in this ghastly book where I was supposed to sight read, I am glad, I am sad. And I was neither glad nor sad. I just thought it was such an insult because as you say, I used to go early and I would look through the glass window where she was, further away teaching these other children who were all advanced and they were playing. And I wanted to play that too. So I had my nose pushed up against the glass pane, listening and listening and listening. And I'd go early, half an hour early to my lesson. I'd drag my mother there really early. So Miss So-and-so told me that I had to play that. I couldn't play. I had to play I am glad, I am sad, and that I could only play those other pieces when I was a big girl.
Mm-hmm.
So to get even with her, I colored all the pages in my book. I scribbled them black. I made all of them black. And she didn't really even notice that. She was so focused on the sight reading. Yeah. So the day of the recital came and she put me in, she put the book in my hand. I remember I was all dressed up in a little blue frock with, my mother had bought me frilly panties, frilly at the back, the little kids have. And she said, now take your book out and get up on the stool and put your music up there and do I am glad, I am sad. And I went out there and of course everyone was clapping and I proceeded to drop my music book on the floor. And when I picked it up, my mother said that the entire audience had a view of my frilly panties, which at age 3, I couldn't have cared less. But anyway, they were all clapping and clapping. And I thought, isn't this nice? They're all here to see me. Yeah. And so I thought they wanted to hear something much better than that wretched I am glad I am sad. So I played. I played Bach.
Oh my God.
And the look on my teacher's face when I got backstage, she was gray. She was kind of gray, like all of the blood had run out of her body. It was a terrible thing to do to her, but anyway, I got my point across. And my parents got me another piano teacher the next week.
Yeah. Well, what a story of both this precocious young child, obviously quite gifted in music. You had these beautiful ears early on. And I love that reminder as educators too, right? That we really need to teach to the child in front of us, or the adult in front of us, because often we can get set in our minds a certain path for students and they might need a completely different path. And I love how you had enough resilience in you to say, I love music. I don't like this approach to music, but I'm still going to make music. And what a fun surprise to have you show up with Johann Sebastian Bach at your first recital instead of I am glad, I am sad. So that just will hopefully bring a smile to our audience too. And just a reminder of just following each individual student. And I love how later on today we'll talk about how that shaped your method as being more of an auditory learner and your amazing ears for music, but how you pass that along really beautifully too. So I said that it was evident early on that you had this natural gift for music, and you're also persistent enough to figure things out. Like, I think even when you have a beautiful gift for music, there's still so much time that goes into the work and the practice of music. And so there certainly wasn't a wild shortcut for you, because I can tell even from your first exposure, you were working out those notes, you were listening and trying things and exploring. But do you have a memory of an early teacher who nurtured your gifts in special ways once you were through those first I am glad, I am sad moments?
Um, I wish I could say yes, but
Mm,
unfortunately, my early teachers were pretty bad. I'm sure that in their own way they were good teachers,
yeah,
but you have to know where those teachers came from. All they were ever taught was how to sight read and
right.
how to teach a child how to sight read. And when I was, I believe, 6, um, we had moved from one town to another, and the teacher prior to that, I'd always say, "How's it go?" You know, and she'd do, "Oh, then I know that one." Whatever it was, I would know because I had conned her into playing part of it. But I got the this older gentleman teacher when we moved to the new town.
Yeah.
And to make a long story short, I couldn't do anything that he wanted because
Mm.
I was too young to have been taught anything, and most of the teachers had just put the book up there, and then they, to save time, they'd show me how to play it. Well, he wanted me to actually play something new.
Mm.
And the bottom line is he wrote a note home to my parents saying, "Dear Mr. and Mrs. Moore, believe it or not, your child cannot read one note of music." And my father said, "We've been paying for lessons for so many years, and you can't play one note of music. What? How can you play?" They didn't
Yeah.
know what was going on. So anyway, this kind of thing went on until I was, I guess, age 11, and we moved again
Right.
to a little mining town, and I got a teacher whose name was Daisy Brown,
Oh, wow.
and she was the light of my life. She understood where I was at, and although she didn't know anything about rote teaching,
Yeah.
she played recordings for me. She would say, "If you get this page of sight reading all right, I will play a Beethoven recording for you today."
Wow.
And she would, or she would play Bach, or she would play something herself, and she was quite talented.
Yeah.
So that made me learn to sight read
Mm.
better. And
Beautiful.
then, of course, I guess I was 14. My parents sent me to a Roman Catholic convent.
Mm. Yeah.
I was not Roman Catholic, but
Mhm.
the best piano teacher in the north of Ontario
Yeah.
was Sister Immaculata,
Okay.
and she became my angel.
Oh, beautiful. I love that you
Yes,
cite that you, again, it speaks to your persistence and this beautiful, determined personality, right? That you
yes,
overcame teachers that maybe didn't speak your language. And again, a good reminder to us educators to keep learning. And this is part of this series with creatives too, is we're learning so much about how each other learn and how we can all make music, but we're going to approach it with different ways and different styles. So that's, but I love that you had those two teachers that were such angels to you and brought life to your music making and really connected to where you were as a great ear learner. And that's a very valid way of learning. And I think sometimes we forget that as educators. We get our one method and we think, okay, this is how people learn. And it's not that way at all, is it? And you really needed someone who spoke your language to motivate then after later on learning written music, but I'm sure you still lean on your ears so often in music making. I thought we'd ask our audience today if you have a special influencer in your life as a music maker. So you might have had that teacher as a young person in music, or maybe you're an adult learner that's connected with someone that's teaching you and encouraging you in music. So feel free to give a little shout out or how you started music making in the comments here today. I'm so thrilled again, Marlene, to have you here and that this world of technology is bringing us together. Sometimes we feel like technology can separate us, but we're finding too that technology is giving us a new gift of me on Vancouver Island and you in California connecting over, I forgot my coffee, so there's no coffee here with creatives, but I'm well caffeinated. If you were to reflect, Marlene, on your music that you've shared in your time as a concert pianist or music you've written, do you have one performance or one composition that stands out in your memory in a special way?
In 1986, it was International Year of Canadian Composers. And at that time, I also, like you, lived in British Columbia. I went on 2 concert tours. One was in the United States, up the Eastern Seaboard, and the other one was across Canada for the 1986 Composer International Year. Probably the most memorable one was the Bahamas. And all we knew about the building was that it was a church and it was very old. And this was a recital. So when we got there, I'm talking about my business manager and me, when we got there, they had these loud fans going, which would drown out even a concert Steinway. And they had all the windows open.
Oh, wow.
And there was no air conditioning. And I think it was the hottest day I've ever experienced in my life.
Oh, wow.
And I was to play a full program. Oh. So when I started that particular recital, I remember I had some baby powder in my purse.
Oh, wow.
And I put baby powder on my hands. Because my hands used to sweat a lot.
Yeah.
And I'm playing this thing called Rhapsody, and it had all of these huge big, humongous arpeggios. And what happened was that the baby powder, the sweat was dripping off of my forehead onto the keyboard, and the powder was mixing in with that, and it made a sort of porridge.
Oh.
That was greasy. So I didn't even think I was going to get through that piece, but it was a greasy mess, but I got through it. Probably a couple of mistakes in there. And then I went off stage and asked somebody to clean the keyboard, washed my hands. I guess that's probably the most memorable experience.
That's quite memorable, all right. Oh my goodness. And it kind of speaks to that as a performer, especially, but as an educator too, we're called upon often to be much more flexible than we would want to be. Hey, I imagine, with, especially as a pianist, there's different instruments, different climates that you endure, and different conditions. And baby powder as a porridge on the keys is a new one for sure. Oh my goodness. And so today, next up, we have a question from an audience member. I decided to get a couple questions in advance for us today. And Ashley Young is another music educator and really encouraging adult pianists as well. And she asked if you have advice for adult students that want to get started with composing. What would that look like for an adult?
That's a really good question, and I wish it was asked more often. Of course, we're all different. We're all different, and I don't know of anything about Ashley except that she's is it Ashley?
Yes. Yeah.
Except that she's an adult. But I'll share with Ashley what Glenn Gould told me. I
Mm.
met Glenn Gould when I was 15 years old,
Wonderful.
and he heard me play, and at that time, some piece that I had played, had composed. He said, "Listen, listen, listen,
Mm.
but do not necessarily listen to what your professors are trying to make you become."
Wow. Yeah.
I've never forgotten that, because uh, that I don't know whether he just meant that for me or for the whole world, but I know that an awful lot of composers think that if they're not writing atonal, eclectic, avant-garde music, that they don't count.
Right.
And I'm so glad that Glenn Gould told me that, because I was in that era where people told me I had to write atonal music, and I don't particularly want to. I'd have nothing against it, but I don't, it's not me.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, Ashley, that would be, listen to Beethoven, listen to Bach, listen to everything classical and semi-classical on the YouTube that you can possibly soak it up like a sponge.
Mm.
And then in your own heart decide, what you have to say. What do you want to say? It's the same as painting. I'll get a painting. Got
Yeah,
a
I would love that.
painting here. It's the same as doing a painting. I'm an artist too,
Yes.
and this is the same as composing, except it's visual, not auditory. So I made the sketch first,
Mm-hmm.
and then I decided what colors I wanted and what medium. In this case, this is watercolor and ink and a
Yeah.
little bit of acrylic. So, and then you have to give yourself time to think, well, maybe this blob isn't supposed to be here. Maybe it is. Maybe it is supposed to be here, because this was a surprise of my life. When I did this painting, it turned into something I had not planned.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think we need to remember that in doing musical composition
Mm-hmm.
as well as doing art.
Yeah, I love that. And I love how Glenn Gould really encouraged that in you of finding your own voice. And I think that there are so many voices, like you're saying, that there can be teacher voices or the contemporary culture voices, and everyone has what they want to say. And so I love that that's an unexpected answer that I was thinking that you might go down, but I love that it really is about finding sounds that you love, finding out what you want to tell the world, and starting there when you're planning or creating. And also, I love that you bring back your real frame of reference as a real listener, and that you can start listening to compositions and finding out what connects to your heart that's out there, and what styles and what colors, and that tie into art. So thank you for that, Marlene. I think that's a really beautiful takeaway from that, is finding your own voice, listening well. And I think that's a great encouragement to adults that are curious about composing. How do I start? Find some notes that you love the sound of,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And I know Brock talked a little bit about that too, like just
Mhm.
find what your ears love. So that's really neat.
I
So
should I should make it clear too that Glenn Gould was not a teacher. He was not my teacher. He was a mentor.
neat.
He was a friend and a mentor. Just wanted to make that point.
Yeah, absolutely. That's good to know. Yeah, I know you had lots of experiences as a student and later at the conservatory doing conservatory pieces and your ARCT there as well. I won't dive in maybe to you throwing metronomes or anything, but
Well,
um,
thank you. Thank you very much.
I have a good visual memory, so you can tell I'm a
Okay.
visual person. So if I've seen something written down, I tend to remember it. you have developed a very special curriculum for piano learners that spans from early beginners all the way to very advanced repertoire. And I love that that's kind of a niche for you amongst composers, is these tremendous works for advanced repertoire. And as someone who leans more on the visual aspect of playing, I've enjoyed the challenge of your tips and love that you've integrated the practice of listening as integral to your learning even concert level pieces. Can you tell us today how you start to learn a new piece for yourself, and then how that shaped your approach to the back to basics method?
I would get the the recording. In those days it was a 33 1/3 vinyl recording,
Yeah.
and I would make myself a cup of tea, and I would listen, listen most of the afternoon.
Yeah.
And the same thing, I would repeat that for about 5 or 6 days, sometimes a week, depending on what it was. I did not look at the score.
Yeah.
I learned it completely in my head first. Then when I was ready to look at the score, I put the recording on. And this was not just one recording. This would have been a recording of different concert pianists playing it, because it would be a mistake to sound like somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
So I would play these recordings, and then I would get the score out, and I would look at the score, sit on the couch, look at the score while the recording was being played.
Mm-hmm.
This went on for another week, and then eventually I would decide it was time to learn the first step, and I would put the music up, and I would do step one, only step one for piano.
Wow.
And this went so that I would have it step one, then stop and think and go, step two, and each part would be memorized first before I went on to the next section. And that's what the back to basics piano method, the rote teaching at least, is all about, is the idea of step one or step two, and then a stop sign, stop, think, go, before you go to the next one. The reason for that, it's so important, is that, today a lot of students can't memorize. I've seen many recitals where they're using the notation, and it's because they've never been taught how to memorize. So that's one thing we do. We do sight reading too, and lots of listening. It works.
I love that. That's what I was hoping you would tell me, because I know that you have that approach. And again, I've been one of those students who does lean a lot on my eyes, but I was telling my husband Jeff today, I said, I love that Marlene works that listening aspect in, and also that you have a process of relaxation in that, because I love that you even mentioned like making a cup of tea, sitting on the couch and resting in that listening process. And to me, I'm very curious about the brain. I get very deep into brain and things like regulation and creating safe places around learning. So when I heard your process for that, I thought that's also a beautiful way for the music to start without frustration. You're actually starting in as an open book, like just listening and allowing the music just to speak its own voice to you. And so I love that you start that process with a sense of calm, which I think is amazing. I love that. And so the next thing I want to dive into, and I love that before I move on, is just the rote teaching aspect in Back to Basics. Rote teaching was brand new to me as a teacher 2 years ago. Before I started teaching online, it wasn't really a big thing that I did either. I taught much on the score, although if I had a student in front of me that needed more ear-based instruction, I would. But I'm loving what rote does to a learner, and for the same reasons you're describing, because I think it gives confidence on the keyboard. It means when somebody says, oh, you play the piano, you don't freeze and go, oh, well, I don't have my music with me. And that's happened to me over the years, because I was very music driven, and there's strengths to that too. I know that it is helpful when somebody throws a score at you before you accompany for someone or something. That's helpful. But I love that aspect of rote teaching. It builds confidence. I also feel it gives more movement across the keyboard and allows for different aspects of development. So I love that. So surprising, moving on to the next question, surprising to many may be that even as a concert pianist who's traveled and given concerts all over, you've faced performance anxiety too, and you've even created a special resource for others to build tools for performance confidence. And you speak a bit about this in your series on YouTube, and I'll be linking your YouTube channel and your resources at JW Pepper for those who want to purchase music. But can you share one tip for others who may be struggling with anxiety surrounding sharing their own music?
Yes, I can. Uh, it's a little more than anxiety. I did workshops on this for 25 years, and the book is the result. It's called Performing Without Fear.
Mm.
I am not a psychologist or a psychiatrist or even a counselor, but what I learned during this time that I was helping these people was that they needed to have what I call a desensitization.
Mm.
People think that stage fright or performance anxiety, as it's called, is because of lack of confidence, or maybe they're not good enough, or whatever. And there are several kinds of stage fright. There are several kinds. There are levels of stage fright. For example, level 5, you would need to see a psychiatrist if you're passing out, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But the other levels 1 to 4 are deal with in this book. It's 220 pages, large print, $29, available at JW Pepper. That answers a lot of questions, but to answer your question, the desensitization is the most important. And what that means is the more you play in front of other people, the easier it will become for some people who have stage fright. Not all, but for some people.
And I love that you separate that. I know at our music studio at Motif, we always say students are welcome in our music making community, whether or not the stage is for them. So we do have some learners who may not want to do the stage at all and have that as a boundary. But I love that when you use the word desensitization, I also think about creating safe spaces around performance and how we can do that as educators. And yet also what you're saying too is some of that is practicing. Like I often say to someone, and I was that nervous performer, I had the opposite experience of yours as I started quite late. I did my grade 2 piano when I was 14. So I was way older, starting into my grades in the conservatory. But I think that it helps to nurture safety around sharing music. And you do that really well in some of your Facebook groups, and just encourage people to try even small portions of a piece to share with others. And now we can do that in person, and we can also practice recording online or sharing a small snippet. And then the other aspect of that is being a safe community for others, and you do that well as well. You could come across very intimidating because you can play all this amazing repertoire, and yet you don't. You're very warm, very encouraging, and I so appreciate that as part of who you are, which is beautiful.
Thank you, Amie. Can I just say that one of the top secrets too for children is to have group performance classes. They do so well with this if you start them young, to have one group class per month where they just perform.
Oh, that's
simple.
Yeah, we do that at Motif, and actually this coming year we're creating a Motif cafe where students can come in, and it's set up like a little cafe where they'll be sharing their music there. And we also do that online as well. We did crazy sock parties this last year when we were online sharing, so they'd wear their craziest socks and they could even clap with their feet. So I admit that it was a bit more wild than a traditional class. But it was great fun. So Marlene, you are using a very special tool in your compositions that may remove barriers for composers that learn in an auditory way and create music that way. Can you show us what you're currently composing using your keyboard, which just isn't a regular keyboard, people? I actually will try to find maybe a link of a similar product. So I'll get you to send me what the brand is and show people it's an amazing tool that you're using. Can you tell us more about it?
Yes, it's a CVP, Yamaha CVP 609.
Okay.
And yes, it's what the film composers use.
Yeah.
I'll play part of the third movement of my symphony that I'm
Beautiful.
composing. It's about 2 minutes long.
Sounds good. Beautiful. What a neat thing to hear a sneak peek of something that you're working on and using this really unique tool that you're actually creating a symphony using a keyboard application. And I know that it took like 5 years of real in-depth learning to figure out this program. I'd love to go over ways that you can support modern composers doing great things. The life of an artist has never been an easy one. I know how much time and effort and care you put into promotion and to creating music. So I will link up Marlene's YouTube channel so that you can listen in. She has a huge series of lessons for adult learners as well as for teachers, and you can check out the back to basics method there. And she also has some inspiring music there that you can purchase, and I'm loving her etudes. And you use that art cover that you showed us today, Anna. Is it the Prayer for World Peace? Is that the right title? Yeah, and that piece is stunning, and the cover of it is your art, so that made me think of that one as well.
Thank you.
And Marlene, you also have a sign for your jwpepper.com/my scores.
My sign, yes.
Yeah,
My
so
sign.
you can hold that up. So that's where you'll find Marlene's music online for purchasing, and you can listen to it there as well. And then the other thing I go over is protect the copyright of the music that you purchase. So if you're a purchaser of one of Marlene's scores or somebody else that's doing composition, it's wonderful to be this joyful gatekeeper and share it only with the permissions you have. So if you have a studio license, you can share it with your studio, but if you buy one license, then just use it for yourself and send other people that are interested a link for their own purchasing. And so those are just a few fun ways. You can also review Marlene's music on her JW Pepper site, and reviews are a great way to tell other people how much you love learning and teaching music from Marlene. So Marlene, thank you for being here today. What an absolute honor. I never knew our paths would cross, and I hope we'll meet in person sometime when you're on Vancouver Island.
Thank you so much. It's been wonderful, Amie, and I just love sharing what I do.
Yeah, well, such an honor. And I can't wait for others to listen to this recording. And I know that they'll be really blessed by what you share with the world. So thanks again, Marlene. We'll say goodbye here, and then I'll catch you afterwards. We'll see you
Okay.
soon. Bye bye.
Bye bye.